Welcome to NTD News. I'm Jasmina Davis. Here are today's top stories. Trump and Biden in last night's head-to-head each offer a separate outlook for the future. Biden promising a return to decency, while Trump says he offers success. Hunter Biden's former business associate is disputing a claim made by Joe Biden. He says he has first-hand knowledge. Twitter suspends a high-profile Trump campaigner over a tweet about mail-in voting. Nancy Pelosi says she is confident a virus aid package will be passed soon, but Democrats and Republicans have yet to agree on certain points. A reporter from our sister company, the Epoch Times, was attacked in Manhattan. It happened during a pro-Trump march where a man slapped a phone out of her hands, damaging it. President Trump and Joe Biden faced off in the second and last presidential debate. There were new revelations and some old accusations. A more restrained debate this time with very few interruptions.
In Thursday night's debate, President Trump and Joe Biden got down to some tough issues. One topic that couldn't escape discussion was the details revealed in recent emails about the Biden family's purported foreign business dealings. It was Biden that invoked the topic by mentioning Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal attorney. Biden claimed Giuliani is being fed information that is Russian. The claim of Russian disinformation is a familiar rhetoric. President Trump picked up on this.
But you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family.
The allegations referred to by the president linked to a new batch of emails sourced from former Hunter Biden associate Tony Bobulinski. Bobulinski was President Trump's guest at the debate. Bobulinski spoke to the press before attending the event about his conversations with Biden over the family's plans for a business partnership with a Chinese energy conglomerate. Biden defended himself in absolute terms.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life.
He fired back with his own accusations about China.
China's paying a lot on your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas.
The president said he does not make money from China. Biden moved the conversation onto tax returns, asking President Trump if he has something to hide.
I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes.
The final debate was much more calm than the first, with Trump and Biden speaking mostly uninterrupted. Nearing the end of the debate, another key topic arose. The former vice president said that he would transition from the oil industry over time.
Because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal. But
that's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
That. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies.
President Trump noted the potential significance of Biden's statement for voters in Texas, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, and Ohio. Biden said he would have the U.S. rejoin the Paris Agreement.
The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs.
The president indicated that China would not abide by its pledge to meet carbon emission targets. And evidence in recent years has shown that so far he is right. The U.S. joined the Paris Agreement under former President Barack Obama in September 2016. President Trump spoke directly to Biden.
I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run.
In the candidates' closing remarks, each gave their view on how they would unite the nation.
Decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that.
President Trump's take came from a different angle. He wants to cut taxes and regulations to allow prosperity to bloom. He says success is going to bring the nation together.
President Trump says he plans to vote on Saturday in person. He's heading to his home state on Friday for campaign rallies. He'll be placing his vote while he's there. He has rallies today at the Villages and in Pensacola and is scheduled to spend the night at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach. The president said he'll cast his ballot on Saturday morning before flying north for more campaign rallies. Hunter Biden's former associate says he directly dealt with Joe Biden and that Biden's claims of not discussing business with his son are false.
Hunter Biden's former business partner says he discussed the family's China deal with Joe Biden in early May 2017.
At my approximately hour-long meeting with Joe that night, we discussed the Biden's history, the Biden's family business plans with the Chinese, with which he was plainly familiar, at least at a high level.
He said he got an email several days later. It listed how they wanted to spread out the assets, with 10% held by H for the big guy. Bobulinski says there is no question H stands for Hunter and Big Guy stands for Joe Biden.
In fact, Hunter often referred to his father as the big guy or my chairman. On numerous occasions, it was made clear to me that Joe Biden's involvement was not to be mentioned in writing, but only face-to-face. In fact, I was advised by Gillier and Walker that Hunter and Jim Biden were paranoid about keeping Joe Biden's involvement secret.
Bobulinski says he had a disagreement with Hunter about the funds. He said Hunter wanted $5 million to go directly to himself and his family, saying the Chinese company was really investing in the Biden family. Bobulinski says he's turning over 3 smartphones with evidence about the deal to the FBI. He's also meeting with Senate investigators.
The final presidential debate is a talking point across the world. Let's take a look at what news agencies and politicians in different countries are saying.
Russian state TV said the final face-off was a real discussion, unlike the previous debate, which they described as a no-holds-barred fight.
In the U.S., President Trump and Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden held a final round of presidential debates. The debate organizers made all efforts to prevent the candidates from interrupting each other.
But he added that the debate was filled with personal insults from both opponents. Speaking in Taipei City, a Taiwanese EBC presenter specifically picked up on Trump's attack on Joe Biden's son, Hunter.
The final debate for the U.S. presidential election is currently going on in the state of Tennessee. As people were expecting, President Trump fiercely attacked Biden on his son's email issues. Biden denies he has ever taken a dime from any foreign country.
In South Korea, politicians were discussing the possibility of Biden winning the election. The country's unification minister compared a possible Biden presidency with a third term for Obama.
If the Biden administration comes in, it will be important for the South Korean government to work fast and closely with it.
Indian media made reference to the 2+2 dialogue, a partnership between India and the U.S. aimed at improving relations between the two countries.
With the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and the Secretary of Defense expected here on Monday to carry forward the 2+2 dialogue between India and the United States on foreign and defense affairs.
He also responded to President Trump's comments saying that India's air was filthy. The Indian anchor agreed with him, saying that was sadly the truth.
President Trump released the full unedited version of his 60 Minutes interview with Leslie Stahl. The program is set to air Sunday on CBS. In a tweet earlier this week, President Trump said he was considering making the interview public prior to showtime. He said viewers should compare the two versions for the sake of accuracy in reporting. CBS released a statement on Thursday saying the program will still air, and the White House disregarded their agreement, quoting, "will not deter 60 Minutes from providing its full, fair, and contextual reporting." This will be the third interview with President Trump. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden said if he were elected president, he would add a commission that would look into reforming the Supreme Court. This after constant back and forth between Democrats and Republicans on the issue of court packing.
Former Vice President Joe Biden told CBS News 60 Minutes that if elected president, he would create a bipartisan committee to look into reforming the Supreme Court. The committee would provide recommendations within 180 days. Again, Biden did not indicate whether he was for or against expanding the court, but did say there are a number of other things debated by scholars. According to him, the committee will consider, quote, how to reform the court system because it's getting out of whack the way in which it's being handled. Republicans say that with the latest comments on the Supreme Court, Biden is being pushed further to the left by members of his own party. Jesse Hunt, a spokesperson for the National Republican Senatorial Committee, says voters should be incredibly concerned Democrats are considering any reforms to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing earlier today to move forward with Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation vote. The Republican-controlled committee voted 12-0 to recommend Barrett for the full Senate vote. At the same time, Democratic lawmakers boycotted the hearing, calling it an illegitimate process.
I am here to stand with my colleagues on the Judiciary Committee who are boycotting today's committee markup on the nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court.
The final vote for Barrett's confirmation will occur on Monday, October 26th. The only Republican senators who have said they would not vote in favor of Barrett are Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. No Senate Democrat is expected to vote to confirm Barrett to the top court. Christina Kim, NTD News.
More Twitter news today. The platform temporarily suspended the Trump campaign's national press secretary over a mail-in voting tweet.
Twitter suspended National Press Secretary Hogan Gidley's account on Thursday after he tweeted about receiving an absentee ballot for someone else named Daniel. He wrote, apparently it's a former tenant who hasn't lived in the unit for 8 years. But yeah, sure, the mainstream media is correct. Unsolicited vote by mail is totally safe. He told Fox News that Twitter blocked him because of the post. It said he violated rules against posting misleading information. He deleted the tweet and Twitter reinstated his account. He wrote, I, like many other Americans, received a ballot in the mail that was not meant for me. Twitter suspended my account for simply posting about it. This censorship is insanity. We must continue to expose and fight big tech's clear bias against conservatives who speak the truth. Twitter didn't immediately respond to a request for comment.
Remdesivir is now the first drug in the U.S. to be FDA approved for treating CCP virus infections. The drug's maker, Gilead Sciences, made the announcement on Thursday. Remdesivir is sold under the brand name Veklury. Until now, it has only been given to hospitalized patients under an emergency use authorization. Earlier this month, the World Health Organization sponsored a global study. It found remdesivir did not help CCP virus patients recover faster or survive the virus. But a U.S. study shows that it did shorten recovery time by about a third for some patients. Gilead Sciences said its drug should only be given in a healthcare setting. The Speaker of the House is expressing high hopes that Congress will pass a second virus relief for the American people. She said the House is close in getting the bill approved for the Senate, but wasn't sure if the bill would be out before the election.
It's been months since the CARES Act was helped pass to help Americans survive the economic crisis caused by the pandemic. The money from that virus relief package has virtually run out, but House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said help is on the way.
So I'm pleased that we have reached a point where we at least, they still haven't completely signed off on it, but I think we're just about there, that we will allocate, again, the resources and the policies necessary to do that.
The Speaker said House Democrats are close to reaching a deal with the White House on how much funding the bill will provide. In their HEROES Act, the Democrats proposed a bill of $2.2 trillion, which would provide $1,200 to every household and more payroll for small businesses. The White House proposed a $1.8 trillion bill, which would also give $1,200 to each household. Republican and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the Senate would consider a virus deal higher than $1.8 trillion.
Well, what I'm telling you is that if such a deal were to clear the House, obviously with a presidential signature promised, we would put it on the floor of the Senate and let the Senate consider it.
On whether or not the bill could make it to the Senate floor before the election, Pelosi did not give any clarification, but she did say she would like that to happen.
I had hoped that that we could be writing starting now, and we are putting pen to paper in certain easier parts of the bill, but it's close.
According to the Speaker, the Democrats and the White House have not yet come to an agreement on state and local funding or business liability protections.
A reporter from our sister company, the Epoch Times, was attacked in New York City. She says she was attacked by a counter-protester while reporting at a Trump march. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more from the reporter.
A large pro-Trump march in Manhattan was met by anti-Trump protesters on Wednesday. There were clashes between officers and the protesters. At some point, a reporter from our sister company, the Chinese-language Epoch Times, says this man with a mustache and blue mask slapped a phone out of her hands, damaging it.
He hit the phone right out of my hand. On one hand, I was worried because I have to continue to film. But then I saw no one had a reaction. I'm wondering if I should report it to the police, because there are so many witnesses and everyone saw it. I even asked him why he attacked me. He didn't say anything or deny it.
A woman who says she saw the attack told us she's amazed that something like that could happen in broad daylight.
I just saw a BLM Antifa member wearing black clothing viciously take the phone from the reporter, push her, and hit her. He hit a Dajiyuan reporter. It's unbelievable this is happening in the U.S., a country built on so much legal and civil order. It's surprising this violence happened in broad daylight.
The man who attacked Liu was also recorded calling Tan racial slurs, trying to agitate participants in the march. We couldn't confirm whether or not the man is affiliated with Antifa, but according to his Instagram account, he considers himself an abolitionist and in a post says he won't apologize for what he said at the march. We tried contacting him, but he didn't get back to us. Liu is at the moment preparing to file a complaint to the NYPD. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, New York City, along with 2 other cities, is suing President Trump. The president designated them as anarchist jurisdictions, which would cut off their federal funding. Campaigning is ramping up in the pristine Central Florida retirement community called The Villages. Its residents are trying to secure the battleground state of Florida for President Trump. More on that when we return. New York City and 2 other major U.S. cities have banded together in taking legal action against President Trump. They're going to sue the president over moves his administration has made to withhold their federal funding.
In response to the chaos and destruction unleashed on the U.S., President Trump in September labeled certain large cities as anarchist jurisdictions. The president has also threatened to cut federal funding from the cities, those cities being New York City, Seattle, and Portland. The mayor of New York City kept his word when he said weeks ago that he will challenge the president in court.
What we've seen from President Trump threatening funding for New York City and other cities, it's morally wrong. It's legally unacceptable, it's unconstitutional, and we're going to fight it.
New York City formed a coalition with Seattle and Portland to file a complaint on President Trump's decision. They said they're doing it now because the Trump administration has started to make efforts to withhold funding.
We're bringing this action because they have taken concrete steps. They've actually taken this anarchist designation and started to include it in applications for federal grants. We're not going to wait for them to include it in more. We're moving now.
According to the Insurance Information Institute, damage from looting and riots across the country could cost as much as $2 billion. In Seattle, local leadership allowed rioters to establish a 6-block area known as Chaz, which led to the deaths of 2 teenagers. New York City's Corporation Counsel said the lawsuit will be filed in Seattle.
In our western sister cities, we have seen the deployment of federal troops in battle dress uniforms, and that is the appropriate place for this suit to get started. And we will be with them all along the way.
New York City alone could lose as much as $12 billion if Trump were to withhold funding. The council said the anarchist cities expect to win the lawsuit.
A Minnesota judge has dropped a 3rd-degree murder charge against former police officer Derek Chauvin, who was involved in the death of George Floyd. Hennepin County Judge Peter Cahill granted part of Chauvin's defense's motion, dropping the third-degree murder charge. Third-degree murder charges are rare, as they only exist in Florida, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. In Minnesota, this typically refers to when people act with depraved indifference to human life that results in a death. Chauvin still faces second-degree murder charges and second-degree manslaughter charges in George Floyd's death. With the presidential election less than 2 weeks away, there's already high voter turnout in Central Florida's retirement community called The Villages.
The community is liked by Republican candidates for its reliably high voter turnout. Florida seniors have long helped Republicans secure the swing state's 29 electoral college votes.
My key issues is supporting the police, supporting the military, strengthening our military, the economy, jobs for everybody prospers.
The Villages are a massive master-planned community with thousands of recreational clubs that include everything from bocce ball to investing and entertainment 365 days a year. In the Sumter County where The Villages is located, Republican voter registration outnumbers Democrats by more than 2 to 1.
He speaks for the people, and he tries to follow the Constitution. And so I'm a big believer in that.
Only 2 days after early voting started, almost 50% of voters in the county had already cast their ballot. President Trump is set to visit the retirement enclave on Friday.
With a record number of people using early voting and mail-in ballots this year, concerns are rising about the risk of fraud. Now voters in Michigan are taking the matter into their own hands.
About 80 volunteers gathered at a banquet hall in Keego Harbor, Michigan for a training session on poll watching. Their mission is to guard and protect the vote.
We're actually training people to learn the ins and outs of poll challenging.
Volunteers think it is important that the voting process is being watched by someone. One voter said that in this election, the chances of fraud are far greater than in past elections.
I think it's important that everyone should participate, especially this year. It's with all the absentee ballots that are going on. I think it's really important that we not only vote, but we guard the vote, and that we make sure that the ballots are only being counted once and that they're done properly.
Critics are worried about possible confrontation and intimidation at the polls come Election Day. One activist says voter intimidation can't be ignored, especially because tensions in the state are high and some people have already threatened the governor. One of the organizers, a poll challenger for the last 10 years, said poll challengers are not trying to intimidate voters, but protect them.
U.S. citizens living in Puerto Rico will vote on whether or not the island should become the 51st state of the United States. The move would allow them to vote for president in future elections.
Currently, U.S. citizens living in any of the U.S. territories cannot vote in the U.S. presidential election. The issue has come to the forefront as the presidential candidates court Puerto Ricans who live in Florida. Statehood would mean Puerto Rico would get 2 seats in the U.S. Senate, approximately 5 in the House of Representatives, and 7 electoral votes for U.S. president. Supporters of statehood feel that Puerto Rico's political status as a territory contributes to its significant economic problems.
A yes vote means that all Puerto Ricans would have more opportunities for well-being because of more egalitarian treatment by the federal government.
The island is grappling with bankruptcy court, a 43% poverty rate, and nearly insolvent pension and health systems. Former Senate President Antonio Faz Alzamora urges residents to vote no on statehood. Current economic measures encourage corporate investment in territories. He says companies and jobs would leave for the mainland if Puerto Rico becomes a state.
In the end, it would cause a negative $5 billion impact on Puerto Rico's economy and would destroy it even more than it already is.
The U.S. territory has also been hit by devastating hurricanes, earthquakes, and the pandemic.
Coming up, Hunter Biden's former business partner moved out of his prison cell. This amid concerns for his safety. Find out the reason why he's in jail and more when we return. Like many other countries, India is locked in a military standoff with China. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will visit the country next week in an effort to strengthen strategic ties. It's Washington's latest effort to bolster allies against the Chinese Communist Party. Pompeo will also travel to Sri Lanka and the Maldives as part of an intensifying pushback against China's economic and military power in the region. Pompeo's trip will conclude in the final week before the U.S. presidential election. The last country he will visit is Indonesia, which is also locked in territorial disputes with the Beijing in South China Sea. Listed among Hunter Biden's emails is a former business partner he says Joe Biden was aware of and involved in his son's deal with China. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on the story.
Hunter Biden's former business partner, Bevan Cooney, was reportedly transferred out of his prison cell on Tuesday out of concern for his safety. He is currently serving a prison sentence for fraud. That's according to Breitbart News. The outlet claims to have received 26,000 emails from Cooney that detail his business operations with Hunter Biden and others. In response to the recent news, Cooney's family told the outlet that they were extremely concerned given the nervousness gleaned from Cooney's reaction. They hope that he can be in protective custody. Cooney previously told the conservative news outlet that he believes he is the fall guy for Hunter Biden's dealings. With the election fast approaching, the candidates' business dealings coming under the spotlight. Hunter Biden's business dealings with China in the news a lot recently. And now a report by the New York Times delves into President Trump's business ties to China. According to the report, Trump kept a bank account in China while doing business projects in the area. The account is controlled by Trump International Hotel Management. The New York Times says Trump paid nearly $200,000 in taxes from 2013 to 2015. That's according to an analysis from his tax records. Outside of the U.S., Trump has bank accounts in China, Britain, and Ireland. The Trump Organization attorney Alan Garten told the New York Times the account was for the purpose of doing business in the area. He added it's been inactive since 2015, although it is still open. According to the report, Trump's tax records show he invested close to $200,000 in 5 companies aimed at pursuing deals in China. The New York Times pointed to a large spike in revenue in 2017, an amount numbering in the millions. At $17.5 million, it was more than the previous 5 years combined. Trump withdrew $15.1 million. The reason given for the large revenue was management fees and other contract payments. Bloomberg reported that a big event that happened that year was the buyout of the Soho Hotel in New York, numbering around $6 million. According to the Trump Organization attorney, the buyout was a significant portion of that year's revenue. He added the remaining money had no ties to China.
Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro says that the federal government will not buy a CCP virus vaccine from the Chinese company Sinovac. The president's announcement comes one day after Brazil's health minister said the vaccine would be included in the nation's immunization program. The about-face was attributed to a mistake by an interpreter. A health official later said that the government had no interest in Chinese vaccines. Brazil is already acquiring the British-Swedish AstraZeneca vaccine to produce at its own biomedical center. But Bolsonaro said on Wednesday that all vaccines are rejected until regulatory approval is given. Coming up, Goldman Sachs pleads guilty to foreign corruption charges in the 1MDB scandal, sifting a cloud that has hung over the bank for years. That and more after the break. Latest on the 1MDB scandal. Goldman Sachs subsidiary pleaded guilty on Thursday and agreed to pay more than $2.9 billion in a foreign corruption probe. The Department of Justice filed criminal charges against Goldman and its Malaysian unit, charging each with conspiracy to violate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act.
These charges stem from Goldman Sachs' central role in a massive global scheme to loot billions of dollars from the government-run Malaysian investment fund known as 1MDB, and the subsequent use of those funds by senior Goldman bankers and their co-conspirators to pay billions of dollars in bribes to senior government officials around the world.
Goldman Sachs Malaysia pleaded guilty to the charges in federal court in Brooklyn. Its parent company, the Goldman Sachs Group, has entered into an agreement with the DOJ, deterring prosecution for 3 years if certain conditions are met. In addition, several current and former top executives will have to return millions of dollars to the company. Rabbit says senior Goldman bankers played a central role in this scheme. 2 Goldman Sachs executives have also been personally charged for fraud. One has pleaded guilty and the other will stand trial next year. The $2.9 billion includes payments to U.S. and overseas regulators. Goldman had previously reached a $3.9 billion settlement with the Malaysian government. Earlier this week, California's top health official said it still isn't safe for Disneyland and other big theme parks to reopen. They're bracing for an even longer shutdown, and so are local businesses.
The streets are empty near Disneyland. In any normal year, they'd be packed with tourists. One of the victims of the extended Disneyland shutdown is Rick Cerny. He owns a Subway store across the street.
It was just an unbelievably emotional day yesterday. I couldn't believe how we were anticipating the governor to allow Disneyland to open. And instead, he slapped us up, the whole entire neighborhood down and saying no.
Rick's business has dropped from $3,000 a day to just $300. He feels he can go on for, at most, 4 to 5 months.
Just my business and these businesses around me and the hotels were put here just solely to ride the coattails of Disneyland's success. And without Disneyland there, we have no really reason to put this business here. I wouldn't have put it in here.
Anaheim, home to Disneyland, has slashed its general fund budget forecast by 30% because of the plummeting tax revenues. Local residents say the state should let Disneyland reopen.
I can't believe it because Florida's flourishing and they're still trying to do their best, but California is just ridiculous. These theme parks are just getting hammered.
Yeah, they should be open. And they should be open because they're really hurting a lot of people by being closed.
The president of Disneyland says they've proven around the world that they can safely reopen.
American and Southwest Airlines have both reported deep losses in the third quarter, but they say they'll lose less in coming months as leisure travel hopefully increases. American lost $2.4 billion. Southwest lost over $1 billion, its biggest loss ever. Southwest currently blocks middle seats for social distancing. It will unblock those seats in December, citing recent research. It shows the combination of masks and air filtration makes the risk of breathing in COVID-19 particles on a plane virtually non-existent. American Airlines is selling all available seats. Up next, Spain is the first Western European country with more than 1 million cases of COVID-19. Though deaths aren't as high as in March, the country might take some drastic measures to tackle the new wave. Find out more after the break. Over to Europe, the democratic protests against a rigged presidential election in Belarus have lasted for 3 months. The European Parliament awards Belarus's opposition the Sakharov Prize. NTD UK's Neil Woodrow will bring us more news from Europe.
Thanks. Welcome to NTD UK Newsroom, bringing UK and European news. The European Parliament awards Belarus's democratic opposition its annual Human Rights Prize, or Sakharov Prize.
The Parliament cited 10 opposition figures in its award statement, including the main opposition candidate Svetlana Tikhanovskaya and Nobel laureate author Svetlana Alexievich.
In order to facilitate the peaceful transition of power in my country, I have initiated the National Coordination Council of Belarus.
We offer a way of fighting peacefully,
which is the way our times demand. It's a time when a human life is valuable and a person values a human life.
Tens of thousands of people have marched through the streets of Belarus capital Minsk every weekend against presidential election results, despite police brutality and detentions. The EU, Britain, Canada and the United States accuse President Alexander Lukashenko of maintaining power by holding fraudulent elections, jailing opponents and muzzling independent media. The $60,000 Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought, named after Soviet dissident Andrei Sakharov, is awarded every year.
Ruling and opposition parties in Germany demand Parliament have a larger role in deciding emergency measures to contain the spread of the CCP virus. They say the pandemic response needs more democratic legitimacy. NTD's Germany correspondent Christian Watchen has the story.
On Wednesday, Bavarian lawmakers passed a motion demanding a bigger role for the federal parliament in tackling the pandemic. It has been a consensus across all parties that the crisis demanded a strong government and swift action.
Yes, in an emergency situation, in an unknown situation like the one we had at the beginning of the year, you can also do without going through parliaments right away.
But some politicians say the situation is different from earlier in the year. Currently, about 1/3 of all intensive care units are empty, and over 12,000 extra beds can be deployed within a week.
Since the healthcare system is not overwhelmed, the reason for transferring responsibilities from Parliament to the executive has disappeared. But the government wants to continue to operate under a state of emergency, does not even want to make a statement in Parliament about restrictions on freedom, and this cannot continue.
Many in the ruling and opposition parties oppose the fact that most measures over the last months were decided behind closed doors by the federal government together with state governors, but without Parliament involved. Often they decided on a patchwork of rules, sometimes with legal uncertainty. A Berlin court recently suspended a curfew on bars in the city, the latest in a string of decisions striking down measures.
We need broad acceptance among the population, and that can be achieved not with less democracy, but by involving the parliaments.
This week, the Speaker of the Bundestag and a member of the main ruling party, Wolfgang Schäuble, gave recommendations to make the pandemic response more legitimate. He suggested emergency measures have time limits, that the government be required to testify about them, and that some require Parliament's approval. Recently, the CCP virus situation in Germany seems to be getting worse. More regions are being regarded as high risk, and this week part of Bavaria went into lockdown, the first lockdown since April. On Wednesday, positive cases hit a daily record with over 11,000 recorded in one day. The junior partner in the ruling coalition said it will soon release a draft bill to strengthen Parliament's role. Reporting by Christian Watchen, NTD News, Berlin.
Spain's health minister says drastic measures are needed to tackle a new wave of COVID-19.
On Wednesday, Spain became the first country in Western Europe to have recorded more than 1 million cases of the CCP virus. While deaths have been hovering around 100 a day, a far cry from the peak of nearly 900 daily registered in March, hospital admissions have jumped 20% nationwide. Some regions are advocating for localized curfews like some other European countries. In the first wave, the virus ravaged Spain's elderly population. But 99-year-old Florentina Martins survived with just minor symptoms, and now she gets back to computer games with her great-grandson. In Naples, Italy, schools have been closed because of the CCP virus. Some teachers are holding socially distant lessons on the narrow, windy streets.
I wanted to find a way in which the kids could see us and share time with us, at least until we'll be able to, and until a new possible lockdown is definitely avoided.
In Sweden, the government is telling senior citizens that they no longer need to self-isolate.
The elderly and people in other risk groups will be covered by the same restrictions as the rest of the population.
The move to ease the burden on the elderly comes as many countries across Europe are reimposing restrictions to get to grips with surging infections. But the Swedish Health Agency has said it doesn't see evidence of a second wave in Sweden.
Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi was greeted by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson at 10 Downing Street. Al-Kadhimi's London visit is the last leg of a European tour to firm up support for Iraq's responses to terrorism and the pandemic. The Iraqi premier made earlier visits to German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron. Hopes are diminishing for the conflict between Azerbaijan and ethnic Armenians to be solved by a diplomatic push.
Armenian Prime Minister says he sees no possibility of a diplomatic solution at this stage of the conflict.
We should fight, as long as it will be possible to find an acceptable diplomatic solution.
While on the other side, Turkey reiterates its support for Azerbaijan and asks Armenia to leave.
We are standing with Azerbaijan with every opportunity we have, and we are supporting Azerbaijan in its rightful fight until the end.
Since late September, hundreds of people have been killed in clashes in and around Nagorno-Karabakh, which is part of Azerbaijan but populated and controlled by ethnic Armenians.
Britain says it will bring in legislation to try to minimise haulage delays and disruptions after Brexit. The legislation will enforce a traffic flow management strategy. It's estimated that there could be a line of 7,000 trucks in southeast England waiting to travel to Europe if businesses fail to get the right paperwork in place. With just over 2 months until the end of the Brexit transition period, it's not clear what sort of relationships Britain and the EU will have from January. Former tennis champion Boris Becker is in court over his declared bankruptcy in 2017. According to The Times, among the charges he's accused of hiding trophies and medals he won during his career. Becker is also charged with concealing more than $1.3 million from his bankruptcy trustees, including through bank transfers to his wife and ex-wife. He pleaded not guilty to all 28 counts. Becker was the youngest Wimbledon champion at 17 in 1985 and went on to win the championship 2 more times. He collected 49 singles titles in his career spanning more than 2 decades. His trial is scheduled for September next year. Sardinian dog owners got a surprise when a new litter of puppies were born and one of them had green fur. The rare phenomenon is thought to happen when pale-coloured puppies have contact with a green pigment called biliverdin. It dyes their hair in the mother's womb. The special pup was named Pistachio. He was bright green on the day of his birth, but the colour has slowly faded day by day and will continue to do so as he gets older. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Over to New York.
Still to come, an exhibition in France showcasing famous sculptors from the Renaissance. The iconic pieces by celebrated Italian sculptors are displayed at the Louvre. That and more after the break. The United Arab Emirates' newest attraction secured a Guinness World Record on Thursday for the world's largest fountain. The fountain has over 3,000 LEDs guaranteeing multicolored lights and jets of water blasting into the night sky. The Palm Fountain in Dubai was unveiled at a launch that was live-streamed across the world. It spans over 14,000 square feet of seawater and features over 120 super shooters, reaching up more than 340 feet in height. The Palm Fountain stole the world record for the largest fountain from Bampo Moonlight Rainbow Fountain in South Korea. It will be open to the public all year round. In France, a Renaissance statue exhibition at the Louvre features the work of famed Italian sculptors who were in search of pure beauty and worked hard to depict the deepest feelings of the human soul. Our France correspondent David Vives has the story.
One day, the Renaissance master Michelangelo said he saw an angel in the marble and carved the marble until it was free. 500 years later, that angel is still here, among other Renaissance sculptures at the Louvre's new exhibition, Body and Soul.
The Renaissance is widely known for its painting by great masters such as Leonardo da Vinci. But these masters were inspired by statues like these, which were the first art forms created during that period.
This ancient Greek statue inspired the Italian painter Raphael. 3 graces are nymphs that represent the divinity of nature. Louvre chief curator Mark Borman says the position of the body creates a melody of its own. The curator says Renaissance artists showed the way for how to represent nature, somewhere between the physical world and a world of divine beauty.
There was a big search on for how to express humanity's deepest feelings, partly toward religion. This was a path of human nature living with religion and the observation of the nature.
Some of the most beautiful art pieces were born of this search. Those were mostly displayed in Italian churches and other religious places of worship.
Sculptures sought to depict feelings and emotions. The statues were designed to inspire and to move the viewers.
Statues of gods were the main art form left behind by the ancient Greeks, and were taken as a source of inspiration for the Italian sculptors. Some of these statues were restored, and others were recreated. Like this art piece, Bacchus and Ariadne, from the Italian master Lombardo.
This sculpture depicts with a great subtlety one of the deepest human feelings, love, tenderness. The sculpture manages to overcome the challenges, and the outcome is this beautiful, evanescent gaze of those two beings.
To depict the human body with great precision, sculptors had to study anatomy and body design. But they also had to observe a subject's mind and heart to depict his feeling, as if the human body was sheltering a great treasure, a soul. Reporting by David Vives, NTD News.
And that's all for now. Catch us again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Jasmina Davis.